Hi subscribers and welcome back to the channel. Today I have Nathaniel Jacobs joining us to be discussing the autumn budget and an example of a Cayman-based client looking to utilise a non-UK resident SIPP. Hi Nathaniel, how are you?
Hi, not too bad, thank you, Dominic.
Very good, very good. All right, so without further ado, we're gonna go straight in and say it's going to be a freestyle of questions, Nathaniel. So could you start off by giving me a bit of a background to this case, the client's situation and scenario?
Yeah, absolutely. So this client had moved out to Cayman Islands about 30 years ago, and he's coming up to retirement now. He's been working as a consultant, and he's got about a year until he wants to retire. He initially got inquired because he was really disappointed with the performance in his current SIPP. And obviously, with the autumn budget coming up, there's a lot of change. Well, let me just pull it back a second. He was considering retiring back in the UK, so coming from the Cayman Islands and then moving back to the UK, as costs had been going up significantly in the Cayman Islands, and he'd come home a couple of times on holiday and thought to himself, right, I actually miss home a little bit and I wouldn't mind retiring here.
Yeah, understood. And I think that's so important that so much of the work we do is financial planning. What does FE Analytics say? What is the cost? What are the charges? What's the 5-year performance? But I mean, the point you just touched on there, sometimes all of that can sometimes go out of the window based on someone's opinion or their feelings or their thoughts or where they want to be. So let's fast forward a little bit, Nathaniel. With the autumn budget coming in and UK inheritance tax rules changing, what's the client's current thoughts and outlook now?
Yeah, well, that really did turn everything on its head in terms of his decision making, because he's effectively got the decision now of thinking, if I move back to the UK, I actually expose myself to UK IHT, which is 40%, whereas in the Cayman Islands, it's nil. So he's really considering staying in the Cayman Islands. His wife would like to make the move still, and there is still a conversation that's going on there, but they are leaning a lot more to staying in the Cayman Islands now.
Yeah, because I mean, from a financial perspective, not that people's lives should only be based on financial analysis, but yeah, for somebody who's been outside of the UK, whilst we're not tax advisors here at Cameron James, the legislation is quite clear on the UK government website. 10 out of the 20 years back in the UK, obviously you'd still be classed as a UK resident. For anybody who's been outside of the UK for 10 consecutive years or more, you are in effect deemed non-UK resident for IHT purposes, and obviously deemed domicile or domicility, which was previously a very tricky thing to assess, has effectively now been vanquished, and it's based purely on residency. So in this example, with the Cayman-based client being away for such a long period of time, he's basically bored his way out of UK inheritance tax. So obviously if he were to return to the UK, for even just for a year or two, would obviously potentially create quite a large IHT liability. So Nathaniel, during your advice process with the client, this is a trick question because I kind of know the answer, but how did your advice process begin with the client? And I seem to recall at the beginning it was kind of a slowly relationship, and there was other areas that the client wanted you to have a look at, and I think that was kind of what impressed him as opposed to going straight into the deep end with the advice. But yeah, feel free to share in your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. So the client had quite a large portfolio. So overall, including property, it came up to about 10 million. So he had property, he had some cash that was sat in bank accounts, and then also some investments that were performing poorly, and then his pension as well, which wasn't performing particularly well. So he wanted me to have a look at the whole picture. Oh, and also he has private medical insurance in Cayman Islands. So whilst we do focus on pensions a lot here, he wanted us to have a look at not only his pensions, but insurance and protection as well. Pensions, investments and protection as well. And that's something that we can do here. So what I did is I went away, did research on each particular avenue and looked at what was going to be most beneficial for him with a move back to the UK in mind, and came back to him and discussed with him and planned together with him, because ultimately, as you've mentioned, Dom, there's the financial aspect is a big part of what we do here. but this is a plan that has to work for the client as well. So it's almost like a team effort in terms of building that plan together to make sure that those certain that certain plan works for the client. So there was a lot of communication between me and the client to make sure that each solution that I was coming up with for him worked.
Nice. And when did the client first get in touch with you, Nathaniel?
He got in touch it was in August, September time.
Okay, understood. So obviously now we're in January, and it just goes to show, team, that or viewers and subscribers, I should say, when we're dealing with clients, like, things don't happen overnight. Generally, a relationship with a client, particularly when they're considering, a large pension transfer such as this, it can last for a number of months. And at this stage, Nathaniel, I believe, you provided the advice report, and the client is currently taking their time to review things. I think they're also waiting for potentially the end of the consultation period for the UK autumn budget. Whilst we all know almost but certainly the UK government isn't going to change anything, the end of this consultation period is quite important to some clients. So what's kind of the current situation with the client, Nathaniel, and what will be your next approach from here?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is it. The client wants, as you've mentioned, it's a large amount of money. This is his life savings, and he wants to make sure that whatever decision he does decide to make is the correct decision. So effectively the autumn budget clouded a lot of, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of things that have changed. The industry as a whole had to look at it and kind of work it out for a couple of weeks, months, trying to understand what the government was actually trying to say with the legislation that they were putting in, which it seems like you'd think we'd get it and we'd understand it straight away, but there's a lot of grey areas that we have to understand ourselves. So then then the client has to be able to understand that. And that was a key point for him, is that he's thinking, I need to be able to make a clear decision knowing what's going to happen going forward. So he wanted the end of this consultation period to come, and then he wants to discuss from that point onwards what's the next best steps. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
And also there was an interesting point with this client regarding spouse and being non-dom, etc. Could you go into that in a little bit more detail, please? 'Cause it's quite an interesting nuance for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the UK here, we benefit from the spousal exemption, which is a great benefit for UK citizens. Effectively, what it means is that when you pass away, all of your assets can go to your spouse without any inheritance tax being incurred. But if your wife is a non-dom, effectively, what it means is that they only get the 325,000 worth of inheritance asset exemption, or as it would be. So it means that you can pass on £325,000 to your wife, and then anything above that would incur UK inheritance tax. Any assets that are liable to UK inheritance tax. So this was a key consideration. Obviously, his pension at the moment is fine because it's free from inheritance tax. But assets that he has in the UK would be liable to inheritance tax when it passes on to his wife. So this was a key consideration for him in terms of his planning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive difference between, not to be morbid, but statistically the chance of, husband and wife both dying at the same time. You're thinking an esoteric situation such as a car crash or a plane crash, something where two individuals are physically in the same place at the same time. It would be extremely rare for both people to have some type of terminal illness. But in this, and in a normal scenario, if one person passes away, at least if IHT planning has not been correctly done yet, there is the opportunity for the IHT planning to be done with the survivor of the marriage or the partnership, so to speak. But in this instance, it would obviously be only limited to 325,000, which means the rest of his estate would have a huge inheritance tax bill if he were to be coming back to the UK. Obviously, currently speaking, under the new rules that have been put in place, and obviously from 2027, with UK pension pots forming part of one's estate for IHT planning purposes, this is what makes his potential decision of coming back to the UK a potentially rather expensive one. Nathaniel, obviously you don't know which way this is going to go and what the client and their partner will ultimately decide, but if you were to, what would be your hunch in terms of, do you think the clients will remain Cayman-based residents, or do you think the pull of the UK and even the potential tax bill would still be strong enough to bring them back?
Yeah, I think now I think they're going to stay in the Cayman Islands. That's my gut instinct. I think a lot of people now are going to play the game of how many days can they stay in the UK for, how many links have they got to the UK, and that will determine how long they spend in the UK effectively. So I think that's, he mentioned that he wants to spend some time in Europe as well. The key reason that he wanted to be in the UK is because long haul flights, as you get older, as we all know, we don't want to be sat on the flight for 13 hours. If you're in the UK and you pop into Spain, it's 2 hours. So that was a key consideration for him. But if he's got 90 days in the UK, let's say, he can stay in the UK for 3 months and then move and then go and travel into Europe from there, and then go back to the Cayman Islands when he's ready to. So I do believe he will end up staying in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah, and a bit like what I was saying at the beginning, financial planning is about the finances, but also about lifestyle. If there's something somebody wants to achieve for their retirement, wants to be close to their kids, grandkids, being in Europe, whatever it might be, we have to kind of factor that into their financial plan as well. So we have the hard facts, but we also have the soft facts. And this is something that any good compliance department and any FCA regulated firm will be talking about is, you need the hard facts and the soft facts of a case to understand why somebody might be doing something. So for example, the hard facts would be this gentleman and their partner almost certainly shouldn't return to the UK from an IHT perspective because they potentially have a very favourable situation right now. But then there's the soft facts of potentially reasons why later was failing, but actually the client has this needs and these goals and objectives being in Europe. Well, Nathaniel, thank you very much for sharing that case. It's really interesting. We might even get you back on the channel to give the confirmation of how this case study moves ahead from here. But yeah, thank you for your time, Nathaniel, and have a good rest of the day.
It's been a pleasure. You too.
And as always, subscribers, if you want to have a conversation with myself or one of our senior financial advisors, reach out below using the canned link to find a day and a time that's suitable for you. And as always, take care of UK pension assets.